As I stated, to be in compliance with the governor's order regarding meetings during COVID, this meeting is being recorded. You all can hear me and I can all hear you. So go ahead, Mr. Chairman, and call the meeting to order.
I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:07 p.m. And maybe we could take a roll for the record. I'll read the name, and if you're here, say aye. Jeanette Berger?
Aye.
Jeanette Berger? Rob Sykes? Let's see, that leaves Sharon not here. Sharon is not there yet, right?
Sharon is not here, and Rob, you need to unmute yourself if you can do so.
Okay,
there you go.
I'm here. So we do have a quorum. As we mentioned, we can carry on with the meeting. If and when Sharon comes to the meeting, we can make a record of her attendance and when she arrives.
Absolutely.
Going through the agenda that we have the I'm looking at the wrong page here. We have the approval of the February 5th minutes is the first item on the agenda. Did everyone get a copy of those minutes for our February 5th meeting?
Yes.
Hearing no nays, I'm assuming everybody got a copy of the meeting. Does anyone have any suggestions for changes, corrections, or any other items for the minutes? Hearing none, does anyone make a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes. This is Jeanette.
Jeanette approves makes a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second? Rob? I will second. Was that Rob?
Rob seconded, yes, Kelly.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
I guess aye. Okay, the minutes are approved. Where the second item on the agenda is a discussion of a recent application from the Phillip Estates organization regarding a residential development that they're planning for Long Grove. The number of the application is CSCC 20-01, and we're looking at preliminary plans. I assume they're still the preliminary plans. They haven't been approved by the zoning commission and so on. And Jim, thank you very much for sending all that information and pictures. Did someone say something? Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Well, we need to, what I'd suggest we do first is have a summary presentation by Jim. Just give us a short background of how this application and this development has been on the table for a while, and then we can let the applicants make any comments they'd like, and then we can have a discussion of those items and any other items that come up. We can have a discussion with the committee.
Okay, I'll start off then, Chairman Smith. Thank you. The property in question is located on the south side of Cuba Road. It's just under 35 acres, 35.82 gross acres, and it's currently zoned R1 PUD. Aside from Chairman Smith, I don't know that any of you would remember when this was approved as the Canterbury Park PUD. It was given its preliminary approval in 2005 and in 2008 received final plat approval. That proposal was for 12 single-family home sites to be on the property. It, like I say, did receive final approval, would be served by a communal septic system and private wells, which was part of the reason why the delay occurred in its final approval. Due to current market conditions, these approvals are no longer marketable. So the applicant has presented to you a revised plan that will be known as Phillip Estates. This will require reclassification of the property from the R1 PUD district to the R2 PUD district. They are seeking a density bonus. That's not something that really the CSC should be concerned about, but to achieve the density that they're looking at, which is 19 single-family lots, they will need that density bonus. This property will be served by sanitary sewer and water from the Glenstone subdivision to the north. They have an agreement with them. There was a referral that was granted by the village board to the PCZBA, which is, Kelly, what you had mentioned earlier. It's anticipated this will go to the PCZBA in October, and your recommendations will be forwarded to the PCZBA for their consideration as part of the whole PUD approval package. More toward what you all are looking at, there'll be roughly 15 and a half acres of open space on the site. This includes a 100-foot scenic corridor along Cuba Road, which is required per the subdivision regulations. In the plans that I forwarded to you, these are designated as outlots A and B. There's Conservancy on the property, Conservancy soils on the property, excuse me, that are shown in easements, which will also double as stormwater detention ponds. These are in outlots D, F, and G. As a side note, I think open space is very well distributed, excuse me, throughout the development, and the whole configuration is, in my opinion, much better than what was previously approved as Canterbury Park. I have given you what the village code says about scenic corridors. From a landscaping perspective, at least as I see the plans, the existing vegetation will be used to a large extent, but they are proposing some plantings around the entrance to the subdivision, and you all should review those and make recommendations on the plantings as they are proposed. There are two types of Conservancy soils on the property, 232A, which is a Ashcombe silty clay loam, and 330A, which is a Piatone silty clay loam. Both are considered lowland Conservancy soils. Wetlands are on the property in the southeast corner, I believe, and those will be preserved and enhanced as part of the overall development. The Conservancy easements, for the most part, are contained in outlots D and G. However, there is a portion of lot 6 which does contain Conservancy soils, which is not proposed as Conservancy. You do have the ability to consider that and make a determination as to whether or not that should be included as Conservancy or whether or not it should be left as Lot 6. Just as a side note, with more of the newer subdivisions, we have tried to keep Conservancy soils off of buildable private property and in common open space. We find that there's more benefit to doing that. When Conservancy soils are put on private properties, we tend to get encroachments. They tend to be smaller areas so that they don't really have, at least in my opinion, as much benefit as a large contiguous area of Conservancy soil. Stormwater detention is going to be part of the common open space. You should look at the plantings in those two. Again, with the materials that you were sent, there are landscape plans that are pages LP1 and LP2. Access will be off of Cuba Road, and there will be an internal access private road system, which is identified as Outlot C in the plans that you have been given. there is going to be a secondary emergency access, which will also double as a pathway between lots 3 and 4. This will be constructed of a material known as grasscrete, which will allow grass to grow through the paving material, but will support the weight of an emergency vehicle or other vehicles that need to go out of it, in or out of it in an emergency situation. This will have a 4-foot limestone pathway centered in the middle of it. Additional pathways are going to be within the Scenic corridor as well as in parts of the Conservancy. You need to look at those with regards to the encroachment, if you will, in the Conservancy area. Pathways are acceptable, but it does require review and approval by this commission. With regard to the overall pathway configuration, I was making a suggestion that the pathway to the south be reconfigured to go between lots 5 and 6, I believe it is, instead of lots 6 and 7. The reason for that is that the Route 53 extension appears to be dead as far as we know. Other uses for that right-of-way are being considered, and a natural kind of open space corridor, including pathways, is one of those possibilities. By reconfiguring the pathway system, we provide looping within the subdivision, which is an important thing, as well as having another access point to that right-of-way, so that if pathways would be in that right-of-way as part of whatever happens to it in the future, there would be a ready point of connection that could provide additional pathway access into development. I'm not saying that that has to happen. I just think it's something that should be discussed and an idea that we should consider. You do have the comments of the village arborist regarding landscaping and tree preservation. I think any recommendations you make regarding those at a minimum should include his comments as applicable. And to kind of summarize, there's really 4 things I think the CSC needs to consider. The first being the Conservancy soils on Lot 6 that would be basically a developable lot as proposed. Lot 6 would not be Conservancy, and the easement would be in the common open space to the south.
Quick question, Jim.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
Quick question on Lot 6.
Yes, sir.
That lot does seem to have an extraordinary shape, kind of like a piece of pie and kind of like a pentagon. But that corner that is cut off, let's say on the north or the southwest side, is that Conservancy soils in there, or just where that the dark area goes across the line there? Is that some of the Conservancy that you were talking about being in lot 6?
If you look at the, let me see if I can share these. Hold on. If it doesn't work, I apologize in advance. I'm going to try to put the exhibits up so that everyone can see them. Let me see if I can do some wizardry. Hold on, share screen. Here we go.
I guess my thought, Jim, while you're looking at that, it just seems to me like Lot 6 has given up some of what you would have expected, some of the property that you would have been expected to be on Lot 6 is kind of shaved off, as I see it, in the lower, in the southwest corner.
Can everyone that has access see the exhibits?
Yeah, I may not be looking at it correctly. I need to apologize to everybody. I had eye surgery finished this week, and cataracts, and I have excellent vision for long distance, but I can hardly see anything in short distance. So, and these things, some of this print on these things is pretty small, Jim.
You can blow it up, but yeah. Can everyone see the exhibits on your screen?
Oh, yes, we can. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I just blew it up a little bit. Lot 6 is kind of toward the center of the screen. I apologize that things are oriented in a crossways fashion, but I'm not sure that I can fix that. But anyway, the 232A soils, the dark black lines that you see those are actually the boundaries of the Conservancy soils. Outlot C to the south contains the majority of them. You need to look at whether the subdivision is proposed. We can essentially waive, if you will, or disregard the Conservancy soils on Lot 6 and keep them all in the outlot to the south, or whether Lot 6 should actually be considered as Conservancy. In the past, again, we've tried to avoid putting those kinds of soils on properties. I think they're better served when they are in a contiguous large outlot.
I don't think, I think you're preaching to the choir on that one, Jim.
Okay.
Unless Philip has some issue there, but I was just wondering if I'm looking at it correctly. Maybe I'm not. The boundary for Lot 6 comes to a point on the south side. Is that right?
Well, sort of, yes. They kind of flatten out where they meet the outlot. The outlot really has the cross-hatching on it. That
yes.
might be a better way to identify, and those are actually the, I believe, the Conservancy soils that are in that outlot, as opposed to the entire outlot in general. In other words, there's more area in that outlot which will be open space that is outside of the Conservancy soils. And I think that's the trade-off, if you will. They are taking soils that are non-Conservancy soils and keeping those as permanent open space. And the trade-off is they would be able to have Lot 6 as a developable lot. And both of the outlots are kind of configured that way. You have more soils in there that are not necessarily Conservancy soils, but they are going to be kept as open space. So that's the trade-off, if you will.
Why,
in the village code, that is something you can.
I'm gonna one last question on this, and I don't have any concern about Lot 6. I was just wondering if the way that was designed was an effort to cut some Conservancy soil area out of what would have normally been the lot. But if it's always a good idea to keep all of the Conservancy in a common area where the homeowners association can have control over it and decide what's going to be done with it. But the last one quick question: the on this map, which would, I guess, lead down what should be the southwest corner there, that beyond south of the primary Conservancy, is that not an outlot? Is that
Yes, that is part of outlot, I believe it's C or D, where you see the soil classification 530D3. That is part of that outlot, and that is part of the non-Conservancy soil that could serve as a trade-off for the Conservancy soils that are in Lot 6.
So that would be
more open space to, if you will, compensate for the Conservancy soils being taken out of Lot 6.
And as far as the homeowners association is concerned, that's a common area.
Absolutely, that's the way it's proposed.
Okay, I guess I wonder why we didn't just make the Conservancy area include that corner.
It will be. It will be protected as common open space, and it will have that restriction on it. But it's not a Conservancy soil. And
I understood.
Okay.
We've also got other areas that that are staked out as Conservancy that don't have Conservancy soils, I'm assuming. like Outlot E. There's some on the northwest corner of Outlot E. And the south. There's a big chunk of area that apparently does not have Conservancy soil either. I guess we don't want to get into the issue of designating certain common areas as Conservancy when it really doesn't meet the definition of Conservancy. But for instance, when we put in the Conservancy posts in these areas, we would cut we would put those. The Conservancy posts would be around the hash marked area, and that light green area would not have any stakes.
We could do it either way, Kelly. We have in the past taken areas that usually detention areas and put Conservancy signs around them. The reason being so that people know that it's part of the common open space and it's not to be disturbed. Again, by keeping it in an outlot that will be under HOA control, I think we minimize the possibility of encroachments taking place.
Okay, no problem.
But we would lose the, would we give up then that having those soils be limited to Conservancy plants?
So that's the point, I guess.
Yes, you would.
Yeah.
That would be common open space, and I believe they have a landscape plan for the open space, and they can probably talk to that better than I. But you should review the plantings as proposed for the detention areas and the Conservancy and Scenic corridor areas, as well as look at the pathway. I think I can't speak on behalf of the developer, and I shouldn't, but whatever recommendations you would have for the natural areas, I think they would consider. So those are basically the 4 areas that you need to look at this evening and make a recommendation on those areas.
All right, and on LP2, are those lists set up such that the top portion is the short grass prairie and the larger group of seeds is the wet mesic? I'm not used to seeing titles at the bottoms of
Jim, I can answer that question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Larry Jurczak with Allen Krakauer. I'm the landscape architect for the project. You're correct. The titles are actually below it.
Thank you.
That's right. So the short grass prairie is at the top of the page and the wet mesic is at the bottom. And the legend for where those go, I believe, are on LP1. Right, so the wet mesic is in the lower parts of the stormwater basins, and the short grass prairie are on the outskirts of those lower areas. Right, they do extend all the way south and in the triangle that's south of lot 6. Also on outlot G, of course, and outlot F.
I guess I'm just a little confused. I'm not finding an LP1. I got LP2.
I'm trying to put those up for you. Hopefully you can see the exhibits. LP1 is the one that you should be looking at right now, if you can see the exhibits on your screen.
Okay, I can see that. I guess I have to figure out which. Page 5.
And on this orientation, west is up, so north is to your right.
You know, Jim, I'm just looking at your attachments that you had with your email. Do you have a different Is there a different set of drawings that I need to be dialing up on my computer?
No, Kelly, those are the exhibits that I have posted to the Zoom screen so that everyone can see them. So anyone who is got computer access should be able to see the exhibits. If you dialed in, obviously you won't be able to see them.
Yeah. Try to find it.
Okay, well, then my next question is, where do you find the LP1 and LP2 designations?
They are parts of the exhibits. If you look in the, the corner, if you're looking at it normally with north being up, it would be in the lower right-hand corner, and it's the preliminary landscape plan for Phillips Estates. There's 2 pages to that, LP1 and LP2. LP2 has the seed mixes on it and has the landscape plan details, and in particular the plantings around the entrance to the subdivision that is part of the part of the scenic corridor.
Okay, I've got the lower right-hand corner and all of the exhibits, but I don't see the LP designation.
It's down in the corner, Kelly.
Right.
You can see it.
In the corner of there's a little, if you look to the side, you should see preliminary landscape plan if you're looking at the right exhibit, and then below that it's Phillips Estate subdivision. In the very corner it says LP1, and then there's a second page that says LP2.
And Jim, am I looking correctly at the maps? There's actually some Conservancy soil on about a quarter of lot 5 and just a little bit of a couple of other lots, 5 or 7, 18, and 19.
No, I believe the only Conservancy soils are in outlots D and G, but there's additional open space that's being proposed in the subdivision that is not Conservancy. The only Conservancy soils that I saw, and let me get the soils exhibit. Where is it? Here's the soils map, and I included that to show the soils designations. The 232 and the 330A are the 2 types of Conservancy soils that are on the property. Because the old subdivision was recorded, that's what you see superimposed on the one map, which is a bit confusing. But I did want to show you where the soils are located. The soils map is...
That's page 6, Jim.
And the little areas that I've highlighted in green are actually the only areas where there's Conservancy soils on the property.
Okay, and when I look at that current map that's up, it appears to be that about a quarter of lot 5, just a little bit of lot 18 and 19 are in the various Conservancy soils.
You are correct. I apologize. My error. Thank you.
Hey, Jim, this is Steve Cross. Could I just give you a little explanation, just kind of the rationale as to how we kind of developed that Conservancy soil area?
Go right ahead.
Okay, so hi, good evening. My name is Steve Cross, and I'm with Cross Engineering, the civil engineer for the property here. And I wanted to just kind of point, and Jim put it very well in his staff report there. The previous Canterbury Park, the current Canterbury Park 12-lot subdivision, did impact these soils up in this area on lots 5 and 6, and even the cul-de-sac was going over into outlot, what we're calling outlot G now. So what I actually did was I was looking at the previous approved Conservancy soil impacts and looked at what we had shown on that one that was already indicated to be impacted, and then kind of massaged the Conservancy soils to the current plan. And as Jim mentioned in his staff report, we went up from 4 point something acres of Conservancy soils in the previous plan up to 7.5 acres of the open space. So almost half of the open space is now designated as Conservancy soils. So you're absolutely correct that those areas are in the original Conservancy soils, but not in the previously approved impact to the Conservancy soil. So I was kind of stuck between the old map and the new map, but I said, well, you know what, to make it simpler, maybe I'll just go from what's already been approved and expand and enhance that to get to our current plan. So that was kind of the rationale behind it. And I do have, if you look on if you look on sheet 6 of my set of plans, if you've got that, I do actually have a little picture of the plat, which is basically that soil map that you have right there. Yeah, so there's the current plat of subdivision, and then the hatched area that you can see that's what was previously designated as the Conservancy soils on the current plat, which is the 4 point something acres. And then that was kind of shown on that sheet, and then we're now providing 7.5 acres of Conservancy soils. So we've almost doubled, not quite double, but getting to close to doubling the amount of Conservancy soils.
And I think, Jeanette, to answer your question, you are absolutely right. There are more Conservancy soils that would be placed on buildable lots than I outlined in my report, and I apologize for that error. But you are correct. Lot 18, 19, 6, and 5 all would have Conservancy soils that would be outside of the boundaries of the Conservancy District. But again, you do have more non-Conservancy soil that is a trade-off for that. And as Steve pointed out, you are preserving more Conservancy soils with this plan than what was previously approved.
Yeah, well, I wasn't on the committee back when they originally did this, so I'm not familiar with the conversation and considerations at that point. So I need to get up to speed on that.
Again, my opinion, I think this is a much better design than what was previously approved, but that and a buck gets you a cup of coffee at McDonald's these days, so just my opinion.
Jim, at one point you started to put together a list of 4 issues that you thought we should consider, the Conservancy soils being the first one, but I didn't get the other 3.
They're outlined in my report. The Conservancy soils and the trade-off is something you should consider. The plantings overall in the Scenic corridor and the Conservancy areas are another thing to consider. I'm suggesting that any recommendations you make include the village arborist comments at a minimum with regard to landscaping and plantings, and the pathways issue that I noted earlier. Again, it's just a suggestion at this point. I did have an exhibit, as this kind of shows it very well. The pathway as proposed right now would come up like this between lots 6 and 7 and tie into a loop into the cul-de-sac. Looping of pathways is very desirable. There's another pathway that would go through the Scenic corridor that would theoretically tie into the Route 53 right-of-way, which is right over in here. My suggestion is that this pathway come up along the backside of Lot 6 and create the loop this way, so that we could potentially have another access point here, maintain the looping in the development, and then potentially you could, if the pathway would come through here, have another segment that you could, potentially loop with. So that was just my thought with that. It's just something for discussion at this point in time. I'm not saying that we have to do that, but I just thought it might be an idea worth considering. I think I have an exhibit in here somewhere that I drew up.
So do you want comments on the plant or the seed lists?
That is for you to review and give your recommendations on.
Well, I did review that.
Uh-huh.
And it's of all the various native plants that are on there, it is a wonderful list of choices, and I'm very happy with that. I'm a little concerned though about the non-native common oak and the annual Italian rye. Italian wasn't on there, but I've since looked that up. Those are there in very large quantities. They are not native, and recently in CNE News, which is chemical engineering news magazine, they talked about the annual Italian rye being herbicide resistant, so that if it got into the area and got to be a problem, or if it got into any of the nearby farmland and got to be a problem, the farmers don't have a good way to deal with it. And so since we've got 7 other ryes that are native to this area, besides the one that's listed, my suggestion would be that we go for native ryes rather than oaks, common oat, and the Italian rye.
Larry, you want to speak
Sure.
to that, or are you good with it?
Well, no, I will accept that recommendation. I think it's a very good recommendation. Typically, when we do seedings such as this in a stormwater basin, the oats and the rye are used as a temporary seed matrix to establish and prevent erosion control quickly. The oats and the rye typically germinate very fast under low moisture conditions. So typically, depending on when we seed, of course, we'd like to seed once and make it a permanent seed. But depending on construction and grading activities, sometimes it's necessary to put down a interim seed mix. And typically, we do use rye or oats. But we can substitute those, Jeanette, with any type of rye and just eliminate the oats if you'd like.
All right, I've got a list here of the native ryes for the area, along with the one that you already had on the list. The Virginia wild rye is native to Lake County. Because of the scientific names, I'd rather not try and give that to you this way, but I could send them on to Jim and have him give them to you. Would that be acceptable?
Of course, yes.
It works for me. That's fine, Jeanette. Thank you.
Good catch, Janine. We don't want the farmers mad at us.
Yeah. Let's see, the entrance plantings are Scenic Corridor area, correct?
We do have some proposed plantings in that 100-foot scenic corridor, correct?
Okay. But the things in a scenic corridor don't need to be native plantings.
That is correct. Oh, hold on. I'm going to shrink that down just a bit and try to get the whole thing in there. You are correct, Jeanette. You have more flexibility with the scenic corridors than you do in the Conservancy districts. Non-native species may be put into a scenic corridor. And again, it's your recommendations on that need to be considered, and your approvals as well. But it's not as strict as dealing with the Conservancy districts.
Okay. The only other, the other issue that comes to my mind is that property has a lot of invasive caloric pear and buckthorn, some honeysuckle, probably garlic mustard and Dame Rocket, but it's hard to see this time of the year. And I was wondering what the plans were on dealing with those plant materials.
Jim, I can address this.
Go ahead.
So Jeanette, you're right. I've walked the property probably a half a dozen times, and you're exactly correct. We do have quite a bit of buckthorn and honeysuckle, and there's a wild rose of some sort. I'm not sure of the species, but that's starting to grow and take off. But we are committed to remove buckthorn as appropriate in over a great deal of the property, actually. And we have in the works working with a tree company, and we're going to start removal of some of the buckthorn and the honeysuckle in the conservation areas, and of course removing some of the dead trees. But in terms of our final plan for the Conservancy areas, basically I'd like to leave it as it is today, minus some of those non-native plantings. At the entranceway, I believe I'm using only native plantings. I didn't get specific with the plantings in the actual median itself. I think I called out deciduous shrubs, but those would be native as well. We were really focused on creating a native landscape for this property. And we carefully chose the seed mixes, the native grasses, the forbs, and we're pretty excited about our plans.
I was real pleased when I saw that because I referenced the flora and fauna of the Chicago region, and you've got a tremendous number of 8, 9, and 10 C-value plants that you're including in there, which is wonderful.
That's great, thank you.
And if you can do the scenic corridor area and natural plantings, I would applaud that effort.
Okay, thank you.
And the pathway would be acceptable in the scenic corridor as well?
I think pathways and scenic corridors are an important way of making sure that people get to enjoy that area and have access to it, and for keeping an eye out for new seedlings of buckthorn and thistle and other such unwanted materials. Does anybody else have any comments on the pathways? And I'm okay with it coming in through your proposal, Jim. I think that sounds like a good idea.
To Mr. Shaw and your team, is that acceptable to you? I just suggested that. I'm not trying to be heavy-handed here. I just thought it made a lot of sense and provides potential pathway connections in the future.
I have a quick question. I drove by that area today, and I wasn't dressed to go into that underbrush. It's pretty thick, and I did. At least it didn't appear to me that you have any plans to build any berms on the scenic corridor. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. We're just trying to leave it naturally graded. But to answer your question, Jim, just about the path there, I need to take a closer look at that. I mean, we would certainly be okay with bringing it around between those two lots as you suggest. The only challenge, and it's really the same challenge between lots 6 and 7, except that lot line is a little bit longer, is the fact that those 2 lots or 3 lots there are all lookout type / walkout lots.
Okay.
So the side yard becomes very steep, so we have to stretch those contours out to at least make it a reasonable slope coming up there. So, you know, we'll look at that and see if we can accommodate that.
Yeah, if you could just consider it. I mean, it's one of those things that we could adjust at final plat time, and for the benefit of the commission as well as everyone else, what you propose preliminarily, if approved as part of this, will come back to you in final form. So you'll essentially re-ratify everything that is discussed here tonight when it comes up for final approval.
Yes, okay.
It looked to me like the property was fairly flat with a few low areas, but didn't see any significant hills in the area. Am I correct?
One of the things that I noticed, Kelly, is that the land that's up towards Cuba Road is a little higher than that is down more towards the south end. And one of the things I was trying to figure out is where the drainage ditch off of Spring Valley Road comes into this area. I think it's going into one of the Conservancy or out, I don't remember what term you used.
It goes into Outlaw
Bottom
D.
detention areas?
Yeah, you talking, Janae, you talking about the drainage from the pond there on Spring Valley Road on the other side there?
Right, there's a pond there, then there's Spring Valley Road, there's a culvert underneath it. And I have,
Correct. Yeah, we show that on our engineering plans on the preliminary grading, and it basically comes in at that south end of Outlaw D. So it's coming in almost the very southwest corner of the development there. That extra area that Jim previously pointed out that's outside of the Conservancy area, but it's part of Outlaw D. So if you, yeah, all the way right, pretty much right where the hand is there. That's
all right, thank you.
And I didn't include the engineering plans. I was just trying to give you the information that you needed to see. I can forward them to you if you like. I just didn't want to bombard you with more information than you would need.
More information on the drainage is something I would appreciate getting to see. I do know that that area flooded in the spring.
Yes, I can send you the engineering information that was provided. The village engineer did have concerns with that, and they are working to resolve those concerns. And that's part of the reason why the public hearing on this matter is pushed to the October Planning Commission meeting.
All right, we have someone from the audience who would like to speak.
Hi, this is Rick Berger, Jeanette's husband. Hello. Yeah, in regards to the basin there and Outlet D, in the springtime when there was the heavy rains, that area and the area south of Spring Valley Road were connected with standing water, and so maybe this is something more appropriate for the Planning Commission. Is we're curious about, with the more hard surfaces to the north and turf, is there any estimate of how much that might raise the water level in that retention area compared to what it is when it's not developed?
sure, Jim, I can answer that question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the intent is that we're not raising the high water, so that area is kind of a depressional area. However, it is drained by a series of under drains that run from the kind of the west property line all the way to the east to the wetland at the southeast corner. And there's also a drain tile that does come under Spring Valley Road at that location. So what we've done is, when you see the actual grading plan, we've expanded that low area. So we're actually making it larger to accommodate the additional runoff from the additional impervious areas. So what we're actually doing is we've calculated a base flood elevation within that location there. So we've got a certain volume that currently drains there. And then we are calculating the required detention, and we're actually adding to that volume while keeping the same water elevation. So we haven't raised it in order to provide that extra volume. We've actually expanded it and dug it deeper. So essentially we're double counting, because it's the same water, obviously, that fills that basin now, runs off the land, and we're actually counting it again, plus the extra that runs off from the impervious area. So we're actually providing much more storage than really is going to be needed for that area in the after condition.
Okay, that's very good. I know from my walking the land at various times that where the driveway comes down, to the southeast, that it's running along, well, there's a ridge that I guess need to go under for the water to drain off from the west to the east.
That's correct. That's where all the under drains, and you're exactly right. That's the low point in the existing driveway, and all the under drains go under that and head east and then curve around to the southeast. What we're actually going to do is we are utilizing those under drains for our discharge, so we're trying to match the existing conditions, but we're actually going to also provide an emergency overflow structure on the west side of the new roadway with an actual storm sewer that will take the water to the pond on the east side. So there'll actually be a controlling structure that will limit now the high water level in the system.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like do not need to worry about high water coming over the top of Spring Valley Road.
Correct, yes, because that structure is going to be set at the calculated high water level, which is lower than Spring Road, obviously. So we're not intending to back any water up over Spring Road higher than what it does today.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, Jim, doesn't stormwater management get involved in things like that?
Absolutely. The standard that they will be adhered to with regard to detention and all that is the county stormwater management regulations, and our village engineer implements those, and we'll be reviewing this proposal against those standards.
Good. Well, I don't, back to one of your major questions, Jim, the sufficiency of the plotted conservancy areas. I don't see any issues that we would want to complain about or get any redesignations or remaps or anything like that. It's got some pretty large conservancy areas, and in addition to that, there's several patches of common area, which I assume will have, well, I don't know what they plan in there, but they've got pretty good flexibility in the common area that's not designated either scenic corridor or conservancy. Do about anything you want to, and build a park if you want to, I suppose. But I don't see an issue with the designated conservancy area map.
This would not be the first time that a trade-off has been done between conservancy soils and other area to make things work better for the overall plan. And if the stormwater review of the area says that what's there makes sense, then that trade-off looks like a reasonable thing to do.
We've had, I guess the trade-offs that I've had experience with over the years normally involves the homeowner's plot and trying to create a building block space where you have enough room for a house in a lot that has a lot of conservancy, and it may stretch around, snake around here and there, and we've permitted homeowners to, kind of redesignate certain other areas on their property as conservancy so that they would have room to place their house in a reasonable location. But those are usually pretty small plots that we're looking at there. Did you have any other, the pathway, we discussed the pathway. Was there, Does this property, is it very close to where 53 would have gone if it had been
Yes.
complete?
The right-of-way for 53 would abut the west side of this development.
Would have abutted it. It wouldn't have been on any of the homeowners' lots, though.
No, but I
Okay.
believe the right-of-way abuts the west side of this property.
That's correct, Jim. Yes, it is.
I won't ask the question, what's going to be done with all that property?
Say that again, please.
I say I won't ask the question, what's going to be done with that area that has been designated for a freeway?
Well,
Right now, it's really good at supporting buckthorn, burning bush.
the fate of that area remains unknown, but with the apparent demise of 53, although the state still owns it and it's still right-of-way, there have been discussions about what to do with it, and being a open space corridor that perhaps had pathways or other types of recreational uses in it is something that has been bantered about, at least among what I'll call the affected communities, those that have right-of-way within them. It seems to be a viable option. I'm not going to say all of them, but I do know that those that are abutting long growth are amenable to something along those lines. Ultimately, we do not know what's going to happen, and like I said, it's still right-of-way. For the moment, the project appears dead, but this project is, like the phoenix, arise out of the ashes to, show itself once again. So we don't know.
Well, I don't have any other questions. Anyone else have something?
Just for clarification, you're all good with the Conservancy boundaries as identified on this preliminary plan, and you are good with the trade-offs that we have discussed?
Speaking for myself, I am.
It looks reasonable.
Okay.
Rob?
Anybody have any concerns with the comments of the arborist regarding plantings and tree preservation?
It looked like the vast majority of the trees were going to be preserved, and the few that needed to be removed were of lower quality. Does that sound about right?
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with that, Jeanette.
Okay.
And just so you know, Larry was actually out there, did the tree survey out there, and we actually designed the road to swing. If you notice, there's a few subtle curves back and forth in it as it runs.
I cannot hear you.
Sorry, Larry was out there, did the tree survey and pointed out certain key trees that were really good specimens. So if you look at the roadway plan, you'll notice it swings back and forth a little bit, some subtle curves in it. And those were deliberately done to save the good trees and go through the less desirable trees. So definitely a very strong effort was made to preserve as many of the trees as we could on the site.
Jim, could you give me a quick summary of that? The voice kept fading in and out.
I was having
Oh, I'm sorry.
problems that you were. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I apologize.
Right now, your voice is good.
Oh,
Okay. The gist of it was that Larry reviewed the trees in the field, and we designed the roadway to deliberately kind of curve back and forth a little bit to avoid the good trees and only impact the kind of less desirable trees.
It looked
Good
like you
idea.
did.
Thank you, thank you. A better job than I did speaking into this microphone.
Yeah, Zoom can be a little challenging.
Yeah, it is one of the Zoom problems. You all are good with the proposed plantings with the recommendations that Jeanette made earlier, is that correct?
Yes, and
And I'll get
Good
that
job.
list of the other rise off to Jim so he can share it with you.
Thank you.
Very good. And the pathways, as proposed, are acceptable with consideration being given to the modification that I suggested. They need to look at that further, but I think at this point in time, that could be just a suggestion that that be considered. If it's determined not to be feasible, so be it. At least we discussed it, and it was determined that it wouldn't work. Is that what I'm hearing from you all?
I'm afraid I missed it. What wouldn't work, Jim?
The pathways, excuse me, as proposed would be acceptable. Consideration being given to the modification that I suggested with that one loop going between, I believe, lots 5 and 6 instead of 6 and 7. Should that be determined to be not feasible, so be it. We can discuss that at final plat time. At this point, I'm just making that as a suggestion. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, we tried.
I think it looks good. It's a fairly short distance from the cul-de-sac to the property line.
So
I'm good.
I'm sorry.
I'm good.
Is there any other discussion at this point in time of that, or would the points that I just outlined be considered as a motion on this matter?
I think Rob's trying to say something, but
I'm sorry, Rob. I didn't mean to cut you off. Hello?
Is that Rob?
I see a mouth moving, but I'm not hearing anything. I'm wondering if he's muted.
No, well, I'm the master of ceremonies here. Oh, he just muted him. There, now he appears to be unmuted.
You mean we're going to let Bob speak? Hello, Bob.
Rob, we can't hear you. You appear to be unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, but I couldn't, Rob, we couldn't hear your comments. I don't know why you're not coming through. You appear to be unmuted, but I can't hear you.
Is there a telephone number he could call into?
Yeah, there's a number on
Yeah.
the agenda there.
It's the number on the agenda. That's absolutely correct. He could call in on that number, put in the meeting ID and the other information that's on the agenda, and perhaps speak to us via phone as opposed to through the computer.
There. I'm okay, no comment? Is that sufficient, Jim?
I'm sorry?
Well, you're coming through fine, Jeanette. It's Rob that we can't.
Yeah, but he's now saying I'm in agreement. He's
Oh,
writing his notes.
I didn't see that. I'm sorry.
oh, he's texting us?
No, he's literally taken a piece of paper and wrote on it, I'm okay, and I'm in agreement.
High tech just went low tech.
Since you're on the phone, Kelly, I didn't think you could see those things.
Well, I can't.
So that's why I'm telling you what it
But
says.
I'm saying we went from high tech with the computers and the iPhones and all that to low tech, a note. He's holding up a note.
Communications takes lots of forms, as long as it's
Some
effective.
of it works, some of it doesn't. Well, Rob said he was okay with it, right? We assume he
just
voted on them.
best.
So the motion would be to accept the boundaries of the Conservancy areas as proposed, the trade-off being acceptable, accepting the comments of the village arborist and including those in the recommendation. You are good with the plantings as proposed in the Conservancy and Scenic corridor with the suggestions that Jeanette made. And the pathways are also acceptable with consideration being given to the modification between lots 5 and 6 instead of lots 6 and 7. Is that accurate as to where the commission is with this matter?
I so move.
I'll second it, maybe. Yes.
Rob Seitz on the phone, and I will second it also.
Thank you, Rob. Good to hear you.
Forget the surface.
Now-
I went to the phone, the old standby.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing Zoom meetings all day on the laptop or on that. I don't know. I apologize, but I'm back.
Good.
All good.
To hear your voice.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion made and seconded? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries. For the benefit of the petitioner, we will roll these comments into the recommendations that go, or they will be forwarded on to the PCZBA for consideration when we go to public hearing. I will be making a report to the village board next Tuesday. That's a non-action item, but you are welcome to Zoom in on that meeting if you would like to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
All right? Thank you all.
All right, have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time.
Well, are we ready for the median project?
Yeah,
Yes.
that is our next, agenda item. Oh, hold on, let me get my notes in order here. We got a inquiry from Mr. Scardino, who is part of the meeting, regarding landscaping in medians, particularly along Route 83 and Old McHenry Road. There are some concerns with that, mostly from the financial perspective. Kelly and I spoke with Mr. Scardino back in June, and you do have the photos that he sent, and I hope you all got the late submittal that I got from him late this afternoon. He sent more pictures that have better clarity. We did say, and this was forwarded to Village President Jacob as well, but we did speak with him about it. One of the concerns would be maintenance, of course, and the cost of that. If we had the plantings put in there, it's a lot like pathways. Not only do we have to find the funding to get them going, but we also have to maintain them over time. There was thought given to natural plantings in there that would be lower maintenance than, I will say, conventional shrubbery and trees and turf grasses and those kinds of things. So my suggestion to you was, is landscaping these islands something that we should consider, or is it just something that would be nice but has, maintenance costs associated with it, dead plants? It's more trouble than it's worth, I will say. But if it is, if landscaping of these islands is desirable, are there species out there that are salt and, I guess, tolerant to that type of environment that would be low maintenance, that would be attractive, and something that would enhance the entryways, which I believe is Mr. Scardino's concern with these plantings. So I will, Kelly, however you want to go with this, that's just kind of in a nutshell what we're looking at.
Well, I mean, there's so many ways to go with it. I mean, we could, I would assume we would start out slowly with something. And I think the one that probably tweaks my interest more than maybe 83 would be some work on the medians in Old McHenry Road at Old 53, and some places where, the people that come to Long Grove can have a chance to see what we're trying to do with shrubs and flowers in the median. Anybody coming, in the parking lot areas and all that. I know, speaking of parking lot, I remember a few years, not too long ago, when we had the old parking lot. I think the big problem we had there was we had a lot of tall ornamental grasses in the medians and the parking areas. And it got so tall you couldn't see traffic coming from the other direction, and in effect they were a traffic hazard. So you'd have to be careful. There would be limitations on what you could do in the parking lots and such, but and also I guess limitations in the middle median. But I think you got a little more flexibility in the median. The Route 83, I guess. It's hard to keep trees growing in there. Every now and then you get one that's growing up, looking nice. Somebody runs over it with a truck, and there it's gone. But I'll admit there's a lot of things we could do in the medians beyond just a row of trees. And there's some subdivisions, or I should say villages in our area. Vernon Hills, as a matter of fact, that has some pretty fancy medians. What they can't do with shrubs and flowers, they do with, building blocks and stonework. They've done a good job. I'm not quite sure what the village, the money for this would have to come through the village budget, right?
Yes. Right now, I believe we do some maintenance on it, but it's really just mowing of turf grass. It's not aesthetically as pleasing as some things could be, but again, it doesn't have the maintenance cost that's associated with it, which is, I think, from the village's perspective, one of the biggest concerns. I mean, obviously, we'd love to see beautiful entryways and beautiful medians all through the village, but unlike other communities, we don't have a property tax. So, the funding for that becomes an issue.
But when we get in there, one of the questions would be, what would the cost be approximately? Do we have any idea at this time? I mean, obviously, it was free. We'd say, let's do it. Obviously, it's not. The next question is, how much would it cost to A, get started, and then B, to maintain on a yearly basis?
I don't have an answer for you on that, and that's I guess part of the question. If we were going to do plantings, and again, in my opinion, plantings that are not maintained, that are poor, are worse than just having a turf grass median that's cut every so often.
Absolutely.
So is having scaped medians a good idea, and B, what type of natural plantings could we put in there that would potentially be attractive, yet maybe only require as much maintenance as the turf grass? We go in there and do a low mow once a year, twice a year, whatever. The plants come back every year. They're salt tolerant. They're tolerant to, exhaust and the emissions from the automobiles that will be around them. And I'm guessing that there's probably a middle ground there somewhere where we could find it. But I don't know exactly what the cost would be for startup or maintenance. Kind of part of the question.
What- Go ahead, Jeanette.
The other thing that comes to mind is if you choose native plants, you want to choose ones that will work well. You don't want to end up with the ones that will be too tall or the ones that are too aggressive. As you said, they need to be tolerant of those conditions. And there's some things that come to my mind, but I would expect as part of such a project to include engaging someone who is much more knowledgeable than I am in making that final type of decision, so as to make sure that we've got things that only need mowing once or twice a year, or maybe an annual burn, or something else that, especially with the idea that after 3 years, most native plants would no longer need waterings in order to get established.
One of my thoughts would be you're absolutely right, and I would be under the assumption, and maybe somewhat false, that we could pick the right plants. We could somehow, some way. And then if at all possible, just try a little test plot if it's nothing more than 100 square feet. And see what happens in 1, 2, or 3 years. The worst thing we could do is somebody could spend $100,000, and within 2 years, it's just a pile of weeds. So,
Jim, what do they do with the parking lot plantings and I guess I haven't noticed anything in planters around the village or on the sidewalks and stuff. I guess probably most of it would be managed by the shop owner, but are there any places currently
in the Archer lot, which was redone? We had swales put in, bioswales put in. So those plantings are kind of just like we're talking about. They were designed to be tolerant of the conditions, and they were also designed to filter stormwater runoff from those parking lots, and again, be a low maintenance kind of thing. Archer lot is ours. We do maintain that, and I'm not certain. I honestly believe that snow plowing is probably the biggest expense that we have in that maintenance, and I'm not positive, but I don't believe that the plantings that were put in there require all that much maintenance. Stem lot, on the other hand, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jim, have they survived well? Again, I've been through there, and I haven't seen that they're dead, but I haven't been wowed by them. So,
yes, I think that's a very accurate statement. I believe they are surviving. The appeal, if you will, the aesthetics of it. I don't know that they're a wow, but on the other hand, they're not dead either. So I think that's an accurate statement.
Did they put one type in, or did they experiment with a couple different types to see which one would last better?
That was all put together by the previous village engineer, and again, the species there were a bioswale, so they were designed to be tolerant, and they were also designed to filter water, so they had a dual purpose. So the landscape medians, the plantings might be a little bit different in terms of species, because those had a function, and aesthetics, I don't believe, was a key function of those plantings.
Do you have a landscaper that's contracted to manage the plant?
Yes, we do. I believe it's Milu, whatever, landscaping. They do the landscape. They do the maintenance at Village Hall, and I believe they're the ones that are currently doing the maintenance of the islands that are our responsibility.
So, Ron, comment. The type of things that come to mind is prairie drop seed, various sedges, and one or two fairly well-behaved wildflowers, you know, like the butterfly weed or one of those types of things that isn't very aggressive and would pretty much stay put, but offers beautiful flowers, lots of color, sort of thing.
Do you think we could get the current landscaper to take a look at the median, let's say that's Old McHenry Road and Route 53, and see if he'd have a suggestion about what to do and how much it might cost to build and maintain?
We can certainly look into that, absolutely.
And I would just take a look at saying, hey, you know, I don't know whether it be 20 feet or 40 feet, but just do a little project. Again, try it.
I really like that idea, Rick. I think that's a really good idea, and maybe we could do that. You know, on just like you say, as a test, low budget, sure. Introduce some species there, and if that's successful, we expand it. I really like that idea.
And again, once the funds are requested, it's not going to be a big request. Maybe even try 2 little patches. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Would I be able to weigh in at all? As I was kind
Absolutely.
Okay. First of all, I'll try and make this brief because I know everybody's got other things they got to get on to. First of all, I'm a little new to Long Grove, but I've been in Lake County virtually 63, 64 years. I lived in Hawthorne Woods, built a home in Hawthorne Woods, lived there for 23 years. And then, you know, went to Long Grove as a kid and always loved Long Grove. Bought a home in Autumn Woods 2 years ago, and 6 months after I was there, I didn't back up from the line quick enough, so I'm the HOA president for a little 8-home subdivision. But I've been in commercial real estate for 33 years, deal with shopping centers and commercial properties all over the state and you know, different parts of the country. So landscaping has always been, you know, kind of a sore spot or a pet peeve for me. All the years I didn't live in Long Grove, you know, and I'd go down 22 or 83 to work, I always scratched my head wondering, you know, why such an affluent community would have medians that were, you know, pedestrian at best. You know, I knew that Long Grove is you know, the most affluent community in the area, and they were kind of surrounded by communities that somehow had much nicer looking medians, whether it's Lincolnshire, Killdeer on Quentin Road, Libertyville on Butterfield, Vernon Hills, Route 60 and Milwaukee Avenue, Grays Lake 45. You know, I wasn't hoping to bring this up to have a solution, you know, in one evening or one discussion. Just some sense of we've never really looked at this before, you know, but we'd certainly at least consider it and you know, see if we can gather, you know, other information along the way on such. You know, I realize times like this when governments are strapped, this is, you know, the timing is, you know, not great at all in that, but you know, I've learned how to be real resourceful over the years in that. And there are companies like McGinty, as an example, that are based in Long Grove, if I'm not mistaken. We have 2 or 3 different landscape companies that are based in Long Grove. My thought would be to start with them and, you know, see if they might consider a donation in kind of some sort of architectural landscape sketches for some of these islands to see what they would think. Taking into consideration what you're talking about, you know, perennials, low maintenance, but yet, you know, aesthetically eye appealing. You know, you might get subdivisions like Royal Melbourne or the Preserve, as an example, on you know, on 83. Who, you know, again, I'm just throwing this out there. I mean, I know if I lived in Royal Melbourne, we actually had a home under contract there, so ended up elsewhere. You know, maybe if somebody approached them and say, hey, would you consider having your landscapers take care of the median in front of your subdivision? You know, they might consider it. They might say, you know, thanks, but no thanks. That's what I pay taxes for. But their residents have to pass those islands, you know, hundreds of times a year. Same thing with the preserve. They might, you know, consider, you know, the one in front of them. You know, again, you might be surprised, but maybe there's donated plants that, you know, the garden club, you know, the Long Grove Garden Club might consider. You know, I've gone there, I've bought plants there, et cetera. I've got a nice relationship with Penny Fulkerson, et cetera. And that I'm sure if somebody approached them, they might consider sharing some perennials for some of the islands and some of the common areas in the village. You know, I always thought the entranceway off of Hicks or Old 53, whatever you call it, you know, into town by the fire department. You know, we have trees there, but, you know, that is the main corridor that a lot of people come to enter town for the festivals. And, you know, the fact that those aren't really treated and there's, you know, not flowers or ornamental grasses in and around there, to me, always was a little bit of a head scratcher. I think landscaping can be among the cheapest things you can do, and you can get the biggest bang for the buck for it. So, you know, I see this in $2 million shopping centers, and I see it in $100 million shopping centers. So, my only hope was just to bring it up. I'm happy to help try and gather, you know, information and, you know, see if this is something that, you know, we consider looking into.
Rick, first off, thanks for your time. We really appreciate it. Secondly, I like one of the ideas that you had is maybe going to the local landscapers in town. It might be a push, but one of the things you could do is you could say, you get this area, landscaper 1, landscaper 2, you get this area, landscaper 3, you get this area. So they're literally going to compete with each other, which is only to our benefit that they want them to make it look good. And anybody driving down there would see 3 separate and distinct, theoretically, landscape designs, which would add to it. If it was all one for 4 blocks, but if you've got one for 1 block, one for another block, and one for a 3rd block, you might create a little bit more interest. So in my perspective, I think that's a fine idea. As far as subdivisions, saying, hey, we'll take care of that. I thought of that earlier today, and my second thought, and I'm on the HOA where I am too. I got horse hooked into it. But I think there would be a fair amount of liability of people out in the middle of a median with traffic going by and they're trying to plant, water, and do whatever. So it might be a danger or a liability issue as far as that's concerned. So that's my 2 cents.
That's a good point, Rob. But what I meant by that, not so much that, you know, you or I are out there with a lawnmower. It's we pay our landscapers.
I hear you.
Our common areas to take care.
Yeah. The volunteers are free, which would be great. As soon as you get a landscaper, I mean, the HOA is going to say, hey, that's extra $. So definitely worth an approach. So yes. And by the way, your Hanover Park picture that you sent today.
Yeah.
It's right on Lake Street, right by the train station. I don't go there that often, but I know exactly where it is. And it stands out. It jumps. No doubt about it.
Yeah. And the, you know, again, just like they have, you know, they have adopt a highway programs. People put on orange vests, they go out, you know, and they walk down the Diamond Lake roads of the world, et cetera, to pick up trash, keep their neighborhood nice or whatever. And that, you know, another thought could be, hey, you know, we'll you know, you donate the care and maintenance, McGinty, of this particular island. You know, we'll let you put up you know, 1 sign coming and going, something tasteful, 1 week a year. You know, to advertise, and you put it out through the newsletter. McGinty handled the architectural design and the plannings of this particular median at no cost to the village, and we're allowing them to put up, you know, some signs that are seen by hundreds of thousands of visitors in a month.
Yeah. Again, that'd be a Jim question: what the village allows and does not allow, and Whether that's state property or village property too, I guess would be another question. State, village, or county property.
Well,
It would be a
village
state-
property, we have the most flexibility over, obviously. I can tell you that the county and the state have been very particular about what goes in their right-of-ways, particularly with signage. The county routinely comes by and will remove political signs and other signage that's in their right-of-way. That doesn't mean that we couldn't perhaps negotiate something with them, but that's the current policy with both the state and the county. The village, obviously, if it's our right-of-way, the village board can determine what takes place in that right-of-way.
As an example, Route 21 has got to be a state road, would be my guess. Route 45 has got to be a state road, would be my guess. They both have, beautifully improved medians. Lincolnshire 22, it's the same 22 that runs through Long Grove, but in Lincolnshire somehow, you get in front of Stevenson High School and beyond, it's beautiful. I'm not saying it was cheap, easy, or, without a little, timing and whatever in that, but somehow they figured it out. And I think, I don't know, I can't help but think we can figure it out if we ask the right people and the timing is right. It doesn't have to be overnight, but it could be in a matter of years.
No, and that's actually a very good point. I mean, as I often say, you want to grow oak trees, you got to plant acorns. So you have to get that thought, started and get some steam behind it, if you will, to see if it'll be viable and if it'll work.
Okay.
Well, I suggest we, number one, make sure that the village board has no objection to us starting a little so-called study to see if we have a way to test it and maybe pick a relatively small area or median somewhere and maybe have a project to put up one decorated median, or at least for a few feet.
I will be, again, making this part of my report to the village board on Tuesday night with what transpired at this meeting. So I can bring those thoughts up and perhaps we can see, where the village board lies on this.
Sure.
Okay.
I would suggest Old McHenry Road because I think the closer we are to downtown Long Grove versus 83, I think it's just overall better, and I think it'd be an easier sell.
That is county right-of-way, but I agree with you, Rob. And it is less traffic, so I think the maintenance of the test plot, if you will, is potentially less hazardous and maybe easier at that location.
On 83, boy, it's wide. It's got to be 15, 20 feet. Old McHenry is just the standard, what, is it 8, 10 feet or?
Well, the right-of-way, I'm going to guess, is probably a 60-foot right-of-way with at least pavement width of, probably 14 feet in each direction.
Okay.
I'd have to look at that.
Plenty of opportunity, though.
Yeah, no, it is an opportunity, and it's something, to discuss, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Run up the flagpole and see how she flies.
There she go. I like it, Rick.
Okay. Any other issues?
Thank you for allowing this to be brought to the agenda, and I will be happy to help. Like I say, I deal with commercial contractors and architects and people all the time in that, and I'm in sales, so I'm used to hearing 9 no's before I get a yes. And I'm married, so I'm used to hearing 24 no's before I hear a yes. So.
Well, if things go, I'd be glad to help you and see if we get something done. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rick. Thanks for sticking around.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Bye, Rick.
Bye now.
Well, agenda, where are we? Oh, I know, Jeanette, you've got a guy working on your plant species list, right?
Oh, well,
Jeanette?
we've gotten the plant species list. It's,
Oh, okay. How'd
yeah.
that come out?
Oh,
come out good?
I mean, that's what I use for reviewing the first item on our agenda. When I took that whole list and went and double checked it against the table that they provided with us. So that worked out very well.
Yes, and you
I
catch
would
with that Italian rye,
And
it's
it just
amazing.
happened to show up in CNE News at the same time as this was going on, and the agricultural community is crying, not wanting that material around because if it gets into their fields,
Well, sure.
no way to get rid of it.
Yep.
Have
Good
it.
spot.
Like trying to have a corn picker go through a cornfield with all the corn stalks laying flat on the ground.
Yeah.
You don't pick them up very easy either. Well, I have a sister-in-law and husband that live in Cedar Rapids, and they got the worst of it. He had 14 large trees on his property, and he has 4 left.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
One of them's laying on his roof.
Ooh. Back to the plant list, what I'm wanting to do next with that, and because of the decision by the native plant sales not to hold them this year, I wasn't able to, is to take those lists and also a couple of commercial native plant providers, native seed providers, and compare them, and then come up with a shorter list of things that have some commercial viability. You know, people would be able to find them to be what we would, what I would propose then as our new list, with the caveat that if somebody wanted something else and it was a native to Lake County, we would go ahead and give it consideration, even if it wasn't on a more manageable size list than the 1,700 plants that are on, that I got from conservation research.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So Jeanette, the revised plant list is not ready for public consumption at this point in time?
The way it is right now, I don't think that most people would be able to read it and make sense out of it. And it's 1,700 plants long. It's just too big.
Okay. I mean, I think more species is not necessarily a bad thing, and I think that's one thing that was a problem with the other list. It was too restrictive, because I believe those species actually were from Reed Turner for the most part, so it was really micro in terms of being just long growth species and not macro in terms of the county. So I think more species is probably better than less, but we would like to get that posted to the web page and approved in some kind of form so that we have a new official list.
Sure. One of the other things that we're looking at too is whether, so be it, the list be long or short, is actually the availability of the items on the list.
Good point.
And where can people go? So,
yeah, good point.
you know, great
That's
list. I can't find any.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to go through and make sure that there were commercial places where people could get these materials, because it's very frustrating to go, oh, that's pretty, and then you get it.
Yeah.
Because it only grows on sand dunes under specific conditions.
In Lake Bluff.
Yeah.
You can find
And
it in the bog, but no place else.
Yeah, right. I hear you.
So that's
Well,
what I want to do next.
Okay.
I think we had fairly good success with our Zoom meeting. Thank you for all your work on that, Jim.
Oh, no problem. They actually work pretty well. They're not perfect, but they work pretty well. We had a few little glitches tonight, but by and large, I think it went very well.
Yeah. We'll get better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully we won't have to do this for too long. Anyway.
Who knows? It's getting old. It's getting real old.
Is there a motion is there anything else we need to discuss?
I make a
Motion.
motion that we adjourn.
We have
I
a
will
motion to
second.
adjourn, and it's
I will
seconded.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Nobody's opposed. It carries. I think we covered everything, Jim. And
All
thank you
right,
for
very
taking
good.
all
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Good night to
Okay.
everybody.
All right, good night.
Good
Take
night.
care.
See you later.
Be safe.
Bye-bye.
now.